think it's really relevant. Okay. I was at this conference. I heard this talk from this guy who was talking about how busy everyone is, right, and how we just have to get over it. So he was talking to people who do ministry like me. It's like we just got to get over it and stop using that as an excuse. People are just busy. Get used to it, right? And he was talking about everyone being a juggler. You're just juggling your stuff. So he talked about everyone being a juggler and how the most important things that you do is what you're tossing up in the air, right? So like what's happening at the present moment. Okay. So he's talking about ministry in terms of a juggler. And I was like, okay, where's he going to go with this? And he says, what we need to do with the faith is just get a ball in there. We just need to get a ball into the juggling act. Okay. And at this point, I was like, what a brilliantly stupid idea that is. Okay, here's why. Here's why. If we reduce the gospel to a ball that we toss in the air, what happens to most of the juggling balls that you're throwing up? The stuff that you do. You drop it. You do it for a while, and then you let it go. Something new happens, right? Or you get tired of juggling the same old things. Okay? So if evangelization, if the gospel, if Jesus Christ is just a ball that we toss up in the air, that's a sad way to present the gospel, especially to you. Okay? So in this youth group, I want to let you know that is absolutely what we are not doing. Okay? What we present is the gospel because I believe that Jesus can impact our lives today like he did to the people then. Okay? And when Jesus encountered people, he transformed their whole lives. He wasn't just like, yeah, I'll be a little ball so you can throw me up in the air with all the other stuff you do because I'm the same as all of that. Okay? That is not what we're doing here. That is not what we're challenging you with all year long. Alright? I believe that Jesus can transform our whole lives. What happens in the gospel is that Jesus actually transforms the whole juggler, if we're going to keep going with that analogy. He transforms their lives. Right? And some people drop stuff that they do because they realize it's sinful. And a lot of people change the way that they act, right? They change the things that they juggle. They change how they do stuff. Alright, that's the gospel. That's sweet. And that analogy that guy gave was not good. Okay? So you can see. Alright, tonight we're talking about this video, hating religion and loving Jesus. I was actually talking to a teen 2 years ago who went to an all-girls school here in town. She said that this attitude is becoming so prevalent, like I can be spiritual but not religious. Okay, and I actually went through a long phase in high school where that was my deal. Where I was like, religious kind of something I do on my own, but the whole like being a part of the church thing, it's not for me. So I'll just kind of have Jesus by myself, however I want to make him out in my mind. Okay. So I was talking to this girl, and she said, actually, it's to the point now where like being spiritual, or like going to God when you meet him, that's kind of cool. But if he actually starts to change your life, that's when people are like, oh, it's no good. That religion thing's no good. Right? So what we're going to talk about tonight is this phenomenon that's happening, especially amongst youth. Okay? 1 in 4 of your peers, according to a recent poll, is either atheistic, agnostic, or spiritual but no religion. And that last one, spiritual but no religion, is increasing. Okay? So this is something important to talk about for all of you because it's really rampant amongst your peers and maybe even in your own lives. All right? So tonight, presenting on this topic, we've got Alicia Baer. Alicia works at Pregnancy Center East. She's been on 14 for a few years now, and she's also working on her master's degree in theology. And Annie Mitchell, she works for Sacred Heart Radio, and she actually brought in the priest. You're going to see a video at the end of their talk. She actually brought that priest in for a Theology on Tap last year. So let's give it up for Annie and Alicia.
So I'm assuming, like, raise your hand if you've seen it. This is not the first time you've seen it. Okay. Yeah, I remember when this video came out, and all of a sudden, I think it was in January. Yeah. And all of a sudden, like on my Facebook news feed, boom, boom, boom. So many of my friends were posting this video. And the first time I watched it, oh, by the way, like this guy, Jefferson Bethke, he has some really good stuff. One of his videos, Sexual Healing, is one of my favorite YouTube videos about chastity, so that's cool. But when this came out, I was like, oh, like his work is really catchy. So I was watching it, and kind of what Brad was saying earlier about how so many people are calling themselves spiritual, but I'm not religious. Why is religion important? And I think that is huge. It's a huge topic. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And first of all, let's talk about what is good in this video. Okay, because obviously he had his intention, like he has passion to produce something. And let's talk for just a second about what are the things that he gets right in this video. Okay, and there are 3 of them. Okay, the first one is that he hates hypocrisy, right? We hate that. That's obviously not good. 2, he hates moralism, okay? So like rule following to a fault. Okay, so he hates that. And then 3, he's advocating a personal relationship with God. You can tell this is really important to him. Okay, and obviously all of those things are good. Alright? But that's kind of where we're gonna top the line. Because we're on board with those things, but the rest of his points kind of fall apart. And I think it's a really important thing to take a look at it and see kind of what's going on. Okay, cool. Annie's gonna put this quote up here.
Already did.
Oh, you already did. Awesome. This is a quote from Gotti Musbet, okay? And Brad sent this quote to Annie and I. And I was reading it, and I was really struck by how awesome this is, okay? Because when we're debating, especially topics of religion, it's so important to do so charitably. And I think this is awesome. I'm going to go ahead and read it out loud, but it's up on the screen here. So before we get into it, just kind of let this sink in. Respect and love ought to be extended also to those who think and act differently than we do, in social, political, and even religious matters. In fact, the more deeply we come to understand their ways of thinking through such courtesy and love, the more easily we'll be able to enter into dialogue with them. This love and goodwill, to be sure, must in no way render us indifferent to truth and goodness. Indeed, love itself impels the disciples of Christ to speak the saving truth to all men. But it is necessary to distinguish between error, which always merits repudiation, and the person in error, who never loses the dignity of being a person, even when he is flawed by false or inadequate religious notions. God alone is the judge and searcher of hearts. For that reason, he forbids us to make judgments about the internal guilt of anyone. Okay, so before we go ahead and talk about this video and what's going on and with it, it's so important to remember that we're not attacking a person here. Okay, but it's also really important that we not stay indifferent to what is true. Okay, so we're trying to speak truth here. Yeah. All right. So next thing, so we're going to talk first of all about religion. This is really cool. Annie's going to go ahead and put up a couple different words up here. And I didn't even know this. And like Brad said, I'm studying theology, so this is kind of stuff. But one of the main problems is that he's tossing around this word religion, okay? And what does religion actually even mean? So there are 3 words, and I'm going to see if I can pronounce this correctly. There are 3 words, or 3 possible origins for this word religion. Okay? And the first one is religio, to read over the things of God. Okay? And then religare. Okay, religare, to choose over again. Okay, so to keep choosing God. And then religare, to bind together man and God. Okay? And these come from like Cicero, Augustine, yeah. So that's really awesome. Okay, so we're going to be talking, especially in small groups tonight, but what religion actually is, okay, and why religion is so incredibly important. Okay. Another quote that we have up in here is from St. Thomas Aquinas. Okay, so really cool. Religion approaches nearer to God than the other moral virtues, insofar as its actions are directly and immediately ordered to the honor of God. Okay? So it's a virtue, which is really interesting. I hadn't heard that before. Okay? Now, in this video, one of the main problems that Andy's actually we're gonna start tackling is that what's going on is that he's kind of mistaking hypocrisy and these hypocrites for religion as a whole. Okay? So think about that. Alright? Frank Sheed, which is another super cool theologian, he says you can't judge a medicine's effectiveness by the people who choose not to take it. Okay? You can't judge a medicine's effectiveness by the people who choose not to take it. Meaning, you can't blame the church for people who are refusing her message. Okay? So it's important to open ourselves up to the church and to see what it is that they are saying. Okay? So Andy's going to go ahead and walk through some of this stuff.
So we're talking about the church here, and the church itself, we want to make sure that everyone knows the church is holy, the church is infallible under the authority of the Pope. The church is also made up of a lot of sinful people, including the Pope himself, actually. So what we need to do is make sure that we make a distinction between the holy, infallible church and the people that make up the congregations within the church. And that is one thing that he does not distinguish in this video. And so you can't blame the church for the sinful people. The church has never changed her teachings, has never softened her moral standards, has never said to go out and be a hypocrite. But you can't say that the church is the problem here, because people have gone out and have rejected that over the course of all of humanity. So to equate religion with hypocrisy is going to lead others to believe that we can all be our own one-person church. If you don't have to be a part of a religion, you can be the church of Annie Mitchell. You be your own church, and you can make Jesus who you want him to be, basically. So what does this do? We make Jesus idols, and I think we're all guilty to this to a point, where we all want Jesus to be this guy who is going to basically be okay with anything that we want to do, with whatever we want the world to be. So, for example, there could be somebody that thinks that Jesus is a hippie environmentalist, and so all we care about are saving the earth, recycling, not that that's bad, but to equate, like, I was hearing Father Ezra at church earlier today saying to equate killing a baby seal to killing a baby human is not really adding up. But some people might make Jesus into a hippie environmentalist and therefore think that their worldview is what Jesus really came to fulfill. Or there is, the person who believes that Jesus wouldn't actually condemn the crime or the grave evil of abortion because he wouldn't want to condemn the woman. And so you would say that, just because Jesus has compassion for the woman, and he does, he very much does, have compassion for a woman in that situation, that does not mean that Jesus is actually saying abortion is okay. Big difference. Or, like he says in the video, Jesus isn't a gun-toting Republican either. So, there are people out there that want to make Jesus into a gun-toting Republican, and that's not the case. There are plenty of Republicans out there that do not preach what Jesus preaches. So we need to keep that in mind, that if we don't have an authority that can tell us who the true Jesus is, that's what can happen. We can have people saying that Jesus is a hippie, and we can have people saying that Jesus is a gun-toting Republican. Those don't add up. Jesus can't be both. So the truth is that Jesus was an actual person. He actually lived here on earth. He actually knew people. There are people that walked this earth who actually knew him. And plus, Jesus started the church himself. Can you switch the slide here? Mm-hmm. He actually said "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." How can you say that Jesus was against religion when he actually said, "I am starting my church with you, Peter"? And he said, "Whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." And through this thing that we call apostolic succession in the Catholic Church, we have had the truth of Jesus Christ, the real Jesus Christ, presented to us in an unending chain of succession through the 2,000 years. Since Jesus actually walked the earth, we can literally trace our lineage back to people who knew Jesus as a person when he was a man walking this earth. So I think it's funny that, what is his name, Jefferson? I call him, in our outline, I called him the hate religion guy. But Jefferson, I should call him by name. I did think it was funny that he would say, he says, "One's the work of God, the other a man-made invention." And I thought it was interesting because what he meant was actually the exact opposite of what the truth is. Now, he was saying that Jesus is the work of God, which actually doesn't make a whole lot of sense because Jesus is God, so how can he be the work of God? But I understood what he meant by that. And then he said, "The other a man-made invention." So he was talking about religion being a man-made invention. Well, I guess you could qualify that by saying Jesus actually was a man walking the earth when he established religion, so we could give him that. But really, in the end, it's the other way around. The church was established by God. It's the work of God. Can you switch the thing here? It was actually established by God from the beginning. It didn't actually start in the timeline of history with Jesus starting the church on Peter. It was actually from the beginning that God knew he would establish the church. So I'm going to read this really awesome quote from the Catechism, 760. It says, "Christians of the first century said the world was created for the sake of the church. The world was created for the sake of the church. God created the world for the sake of communion with his divine life, communion brought about by the convocation of men in Christ. And this convocation is the church. The church is the goal of all things. And God permitted such painful upheavals as the angels' fall and man's sin only as occasions and means for displaying all the power of his arm and the whole measure of the love he wanted to give the world. Just as God's will is creation and is called the world, so his intention is the salvation of men, and it is called the church. The church is our salvation." God knew that the church was going to be filled with sinful people. He established it anyway as a means for our salvation. We need this authority in order to reach our salvation. And this is the big reason why we need to refute this video, charitably of course, but why we need to refute videos like this. Because souls are at stake here. If you're worshiping a made-up Jesus, you're not worshiping Jesus. And what does that mean for your soul? Do we want to take that risk? No. We have an all-merciful God, but why take the risk? Don't you want to worship the true Jesus, the real Jesus who walked the earth and encountered real people? I certainly do. So what this video does is actually, instead of Jesus being the man-made invention, or instead of Jesus being the work of God, he becomes the man-made invention. That's what this video is allowing people to do. If you want to be, oh, well, Jesus is just going to affirm whatever I want to believe about him. No, we need that authority. The church, this unbroken line of the truth of Jesus Christ, the real Jesus Christ, comes to us through the authority of the church. We cannot know the true Jesus without the church. And so if you want to worship, if you want to have a real relationship with the real Jesus Christ, you need the church. I need the church. And this is something that I came to realize when I was actually out of college. When I was about your age, when I was in high school, I started to put my spiritual eggs in two baskets, if you will. I was still going to Mass every Sunday. I managed to keep that up, surprisingly enough. But I had a lot of friends, and I started attending other church services in addition to Mass that would advocate for a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, just like Jefferson was doing in this video. But it also started giving me these ideas that I could make Jesus my own. Like I could make him whatever I wanted him to be. That led to a lot of problems for me in college. I started justifying a lot of very immoral things that, looking back on, I think, where did I think that I was going to be able to get away with this? And I have to credit the Eucharist, the fact that I continued to go to Mass even throughout college was very beneficial for me. There was a campus pastor at my college that actually once handed me a book. My friends all went to this Pentecostal Assemblies of God church, and so I was in a campus ministry program with them through that church. And he actually handed me this little book, which I think is probably like their catechism, except it was really, really thin. It's really funny thinking about it now, like the difference between these two books, like what we believe in the Pentecostal church and then the catechism of the Catholic Church, which is like this thick. He handed me this book, which I have to admit I never read. But he said, "Here, I want you to read this. I think that you should consider stop being Catholic." He actually said that to me, and I had a big wake-up moment at that moment, and really had to make a decision. And I credit it to the Eucharist, the real person of Jesus Christ, and receiving him every week, even though I wasn't making my Catholic faith a priority. I credit that to keeping me in the faith enough, holding on by a thread, that I could come back to the faith fully and now even be on a Catholic radio station. I mean, I get kind of teared up about it, thinking about it, because we have this great gift of the Eucharist. Jesus gave us his body and his blood, albeit under the form of bread and wine. It may not look like a human person, but we really have Jesus. You guys encountered him last week in Credo for 3 whole days, 24/7. Well, 24/3, I guess you could say. And whom you will be encountering next week. I really want to encourage you all to go to Encounter next week and encounter the true person of Jesus Christ, the true person that we encounter in every Mass. And I encourage you to think about this, to think about the church as the authority that we need to know the real Jesus Christ. Our souls really are at stake here. So I want to play for you one more video.